Devil ship. This devil ship, nothing I lay my hands on works properly. That was Vladimir Komarov screaming as he fell from space in a capsule that couldn't even crash correctly. In 1967, the Soviet Union decided what better way to celebrate their 50th anniversary than sending a man to space in a flying coffin. Soyuz 1 had over 200 known problems. There was an actual list. Komarov saw it. His friend Yuri Gagarin, aka the first man in space, saw it too. As a matter of fact, everyone who mattered saw it, but no one stopped it. Gagarin begged him not to fly, but Komarov refused because if he didn't go, they'd send Gagarin instead. So he went, and before launch, he made one request. If I'm going to die, give me an open casket funeral so they can see what they did. Well, not those exact words, but you get the gist. The mission fell apart instantly during re-entry. The solar panels jammed up. Power failed. Every system he touched malfunctioned like some sick joke, and when the parachute failed, Komarov started yelling. This devil ship, nothing I lay my hands on works properly. One moment he was raging, the next he had melted. See you tomorrow. Prepare cognac. See you tomorrow. Vladislav Volkov said that with a laugh before returning to Earth. This was some sort of joke, the kind you make when everything seems fine. But by the time the capsule landed, there was nothing to laugh about. Soyuz 11 was supposed to be a victory parade. 3 cosmonauts, 23 days in space. The Soviets were feeling smug. They were like, take that, US. You might have the moon, but we have the longest time in space. Neil Armstrong had just done his thing then, and the Soviets wanted to one-up the US. There were posters, state-run TV specials, and screaming girls. Oh, Volkov was popular with the girls. He was like a K-pop idol starting a world tour. Then, during module separation, a valve popped open. Not a dramatic explosion, just a tiny hiss. A hole the size of a coin. Just big enough to let space crawl in. There were no suits, no backups. Just 11 minutes of breathing nothing while your blood starts to boil like a forgotten kettle. The capsule came down perfectly. Parachute opened, landing smooth, everything looked normal. The recovery team knocked and were like, here's your cognac, boy! But there was no response, so they pried the capsule open and inside there were 3 cosmonauts seated like nothing had happened. Still buckled in. Blue faces, blood from the nose. One of them was still warm though, so they tried CPR. But Volkov and the other 2 cosmonauts were gone forever. Leica! Leica didn't get a famous last line, just a heart beating too fast and lungs trying to outrun fear. You see, Leica was a stray dog. One day she was dodging legs in Moscow traffic, the next she was strapped down inside Sputnik 2, riding 5 Gs into the upper atmosphere for the glory of the Soviet Union. She couldn't turn around. She couldn't sit up. She had a metal suit, a food tube, and a single plan: die quietly. Engineers assumed she'd survive a few days. The propaganda said a week. They told the world she was being monitored, cared for, and pampered like a national pet. The launch button was hit, and Leica went into space. G-forces slammed her body 5 times harder than Earth's gravity. Her heart rate tripled. Her breathing quadrupled. Pure panic took over. The ship made it to orbit, but the capsule didn't hold. The heat shield failed, and the inside temperature started climbing fast. By orbit 4, the cabin was over 90 degrees. Leica didn't make it past the next one. Her heart rate never came back down. Just hours after launch, Leica cooked in silence. Her body circled the Earth for 5 months. When space gave her back, she was all burnt up. The official report said she was brave. What they meant was she died without biting anyone. If she could talk, her last words might have been, "Get me the hell out of here! We're burning! We're burning up!" That's what Roger Chaffee shouted from inside a sealed capsule moments before everything went silent. It was supposed to be a routine test, more like what you'd do with a car before deciding to go on a very long road trip. Just 3 astronauts strapped into Apollo 1, running through a mock countdown. Inside the cabin there was pure oxygen, high pressure, and enough flammable material to turn the capsule into a space-aged grill. The comms had been glitching all day. Now this was getting on Gus Grissom's nerves. How would they get to the moon if they couldn't transmit messages between 3 buildings? Smooth communication would soon be the least of Grissom's concerns. Something sparked, possibly a wire near Grissom's seat. There was no warning, just heat. One of the astronauts, possibly Chaffee, screamed, "Flames!" A messy and grim chaos broke loose. Ed White followed with, "We've got a fire in the cockpit." Then Chaffee again shouted, "We have a bad fire! We're burning up!" The transmission ended in a scream. 17 seconds after it started, the radio went dead. 5 minutes later, the hatch was opened, and it was a sad sight. The 3 men were suffocated, burned, or both, possibly within 30 seconds. They never got to see the moon. "Houston, we've had a problem." That's how Jim Lovell announced that the mission had gone sideways. There was no alarm, just the calm voice of a man watching his ship come apart in space. So it was April 13th, 1970. Apollo 13 was 56 hours into flight. Day 3 of what was supposed to be a routine moon landing. But the service module blew apart. Power died and an oxygen tank exploded. So, no moon landing for Apollo 13 again. Their mission switched from fine and dandy to survival on the spot. The explosion was traced back to a broken switch. Turns out the heater system in the tank had been flawed for 5 years. It had been running at the wrong voltage for years. But no one noticed, so no one fixed it, until it ignited the tank. Now the command module was useless. The 3 men had to cram into the lunar module. A place designed to hold 2 men for 2 days now had to hold 3 men for 4 days. There was no heat, low power, and too much carbon dioxide, meaning breathe too much or too fast, and you'd run out of oxygen before you reach Earth. They even had to build a CO2 filter out of spare parts, duct tape, and hope. Somehow it worked because failure meant suffocation. After 6 days of drifting and solving one crisis after another, they made it back. When it was over, Lovell said, "I'm afraid this is going to be the last lunar mission for a long time." Well, no one would want to do that again. Hey, but how about something you've not done, such as liking the video and subscribing to the channel? Roger, go at throttle up. Commander Francis Scobie gave the go-ahead. A few seconds later, the ship came apart. It was January 28, 1986. Challenger launched on schedule. A teacher was on board. Everyone was smiling. All 7 of them were on board the Challenger. The country was watching like it was the Super Bowl. The pilot, Smith, and the female astronaut, Resnick, were pumping up until the booster seal failed, and the shuttle began to play mean jokes on them. At 70 seconds, Houston radioed in, "Challenger, go at throttle up." Scobie answered, "Roger, go at throttle up." 3 seconds later, the shuttle stabbed them in the back like some fake friend, and all they could do is watch. Roger. That's as far as he got. You see, Commander Rick Husband was responding to a tire pressure warning. His mic cut out halfway through a sentence, and the rest never came. It was February 1st, 2003. Columbia was coming home after 16 days in orbit. Nothing dramatic, just research, experiments, the usual. After floating around in a metal tin for over 2 weeks, the crew was probably dreaming of Mother Earth's sweet gravity and their soft pillows at home. Everything was moving smoothly, unless you count the left wing that was already coming apart. This is what happened. About 17 days earlier, a piece of foam broke off during a launch. It hit the wing. Hard. NASA knew about the foam problem. They also knew the shuttle was still flying, so they let it go. But the crew didn't know anything was wrong, so they were minding their astronaut business, checking system levels and whatever it is astronauts did to prepare for re-entry. All of a sudden, tire pressure sensors started dropping, one by one. Then all at once. Mission Control called up to confirm. Husband responded, "Roger, and that was the last thing anyone heard. No alarms, no shouting, just a sentence that didn't finish. 32 seconds after Husband's last words, the shuttle tore apart over Texas. Sadly, none of them survived. It's my fault. It's my fault. I'm so sorry. No one else is to blame." That's what Valentin Bondarenko kept saying, over and over, as his skin melted off. This was another space test gone wrong, so they called it the Chamber of Silence. A soundproof room with a bed, a toilet, a hot plate, and just enough time to go insane. Cosmonauts were sealed in without knowing how long they'd be there. No clocks, no schedule, just classical music at random and 4 hours of mandatory biosensor tests per day. The Soviets really wanted their cosmonauts to know that space wasn't for the weak, and the cosmonaut for the day was Bondarenko. The room was filled with 50% oxygen because someone thought high-pressure flammable gas was a good way to simulate space. Bondarenko had just finished his sensor removal. He tossed an alcohol-soaked cotton ball, but it missed the trash and it hit the hot plate. It ignited, and the excess oxygen in the room went insane. The fire went everywhere. The chamber was pressurized, and the door was 16 inches of solid lead. So it took 30 minutes to open. By the time they got in, Bondarenko was curled on the floor. No skin, no eyes, still breathing. He kept whispering, "It's my fault. I'm so sorry. No one else is to blame." Then later, at the hospital, he mumbled, "Too much pain. Do something, please, to kill the pain." They gave him morphine through the soles of his feet, as that was the only skin left. But he didn't survive. A little mistake cost him his life, and his name erased from the record by the Soviets for 20 years. Uh-oh. That was the last thing Michael Smith, the pilot of the Challenger, ever said. The shuttle had been in the air for 73 seconds. By then, something was already wrong. He saw it, whatever it was, but it was too late to explain, too late to fix, just, uh-oh. 7 seconds after liftoff, he'd been celebrating. "Go, you mother..." They were climbing fast, and his dreams were being lived. He had trained for this very moment. Until a flame slipped through a damaged booster seal at 58 seconds. It burned quietly at first. Then it reached the fuel tank. Nobody knew what was happening. Not fast enough. The last command from Houston came at second 70. And at second 73, the shuttle tore apart midair. The crew cabin didn't break through. It fell intact. So Smith may have been alive for all of it. But his mic never said another word. Just, uh-oh. A warning with no time left to matter. "We have serious problems here." That's what Neil Armstrong said right before the mission nearly killed them. One moment they were docked. The next they were spinning like a coin on a countertop, faster with every second. Gemini 8 had just completed the first successful space docking. They were happy, and Armstrong called it in. Then the ship started tumbling. At first it was slow. And just when they thought they were trying to make sense of what was happening, the shakes became more violent. The kind of spin that shakes your brain loose if you don't stop it in time. He tells ground control at once, "We have serious problems here. We're tumbling end over end." He undocked, but the tumbling got worse. If the shaking didn't stop, they'll end up as souvenirs in space. So Armstrong cut the power to the main thrusters and switched to the re-entry system. Now this was the system meant for landing back on Earth. But it worked, and the mission was canceled. They gained control and landed in the Pacific. Nobody died. But for a few minutes, Gemini 8 was one bad decision away from becoming a steel coffin in orbit, and Armstrong was so close to losing his spot as the first man to land on the moon. But he didn't, and you had to learn his name for your history test.